So I've been given the privilege to share a little bit about my story and how God has infected my life. So, when I was little, God was never really a factor to my family. Both my parents were highly addicted to drugs, which left us homeless for the first 3 years of my life. We would stay in motel rooms and occasionally with friends of my parents, but never our own place to call home. During this time, my parents just fell further into their addiction. This led my father to attempt to end his own life in the presence of me and my older sister, and I remember that moment vividly. This event caused DFACS to step in and take me and my 6-year-old sister into their custody. This would be the beginning of an even darker time in my life. At only 3 years old, I was stripped of everything I'd ever known. I was placed in over 10 plus foster homes in just 4 short years. During those years, me and my sister were separated into different homes with the hope of being adopted. I was abused physically and mentally by multiple different foster parents, and then at around age 5, my innocence was completely stolen from me when I was sexually assaulted by one of my foster fathers. Finally, at age 7, my biological grandparents were granted full custody of me. But just a month after becoming sole caregivers, my grandfather passed away, leaving my grandmother alone to raise me. At this point in my life was the first time I ever was introduced to the church. My grandmother made sure I was at every church service, from Sunday school classes to Wednesday night group meetings. One summer vacation, I heard the verse Joshua 1:9 for the first time, and something about that verse really stuck with me. I then made it my goal to memorize the verse for times when I needed it. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous, do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. After going through all the trauma and abuse I had experienced in my short life at this point, I was very skeptical of a father figure who was all loving and gentle. This was always my biggest battle. I couldn't understand how God could allow everything to happen to such a young, innocent child like me. I didn't understand why I couldn't have a normal family. When I was 11 years old, a wish I had for years was finally answered. My grandmother met a family through the church that was willing to help her. Shortly after this, I was placed into their care full-time. Although life was finally looking up for me and I was blessed with the most amazing family to be raised by, I still had the baggage and trauma from my past, which led me to stray completely away from my relationship with God. At this point in my life, it was more of a resentment towards him than anything else. At age 14, overwhelmed with the mental struggles caused by foster care and just the normal middle school issues, I tried to end my life for the first time by taking a bottle of pills. That day would become my first solid piece of evidence that God was active and alive in my life. A few hours later, I would be taken to the hospital after it was made known what I had done. By the grace of God, the random bottle of medication I grabbed in the pantry was designed to refuse overdose. At this time, I put no connection to this and God's goodness. I still held my resentment for God very strongly. The week I turned 18, I moved out of my adopted parents' house and lost all contact to them due to my own personal mental battles. I was able to move in with my boyfriend and was then introduced to SouthCrest. I was very skeptical of trying SouthCrest due to the relationship I had with God at the time and not feeling worthy of sitting in these chairs. But little did I know this would be the beginning of a whole new life for myself. At this point in my life, I was still in high school, living on my own, not knowing how I was going to be able to go to school and work in order to pay the bills that I had. But boy, did he provide. I was able to continue my senior year virtually, which allowed me to work a full-time job. He placed people in my life to help me stay afloat and help me get on the medications I needed to overcome the darkness in my mind. I began serving at SouthCrest, doing something I loved so much. Capturing the moments on Sunday mornings where all of you are full of joy brings me a kind of peace I will never be able to explain. Although I am closer to God now than ever before, I definitely still have my struggles. but he is always with me. God has been preparing me for this year, which has surprisingly been one of the hardest years of my life. The preparation became evident last October when I was gifted a free ticket to the Passion Conference in Atlanta by a person in my community through Facebook. January came around and I attended Passion with my friends from church and felt God's presence like never before. The late car ride home from Atlanta, I remember praying to him to take over my life and bring me closer to him, and that's exactly what he did. Not but 3 short weeks later, I found myself without a home again. I slept in hotel rooms and with friends and family some nights, but I can honestly say that during that time I have never felt closer to God. It was like he was right next to me the entire time. I wasn't sure how I would find a place to live with the price of living being so high, even though I have an amazing full-time job, but God never fails. I was provided with an adorable little home for the price I could actually afford, and I remember sitting in my very own bed for the first night in my new home, just crying and thanking God for holding my hand through the storm. Although I may not be the perfect Christian and I do not deserve the love that God gives me every single day, he never fails. He will always provide for me, and without him, I would not be here today. He is a light that I see when the darkness of my past creeps in. I can't express my love and gratitude I have for this church and all of you. The family and support I have here is like no other. No matter how hard of a week I have, the moment I walk through those glass doors, I feel God's presence with every smiling face I pass. This is my sanctuary, my step away from the darkness the world holds, and for that I am forever thankful. If I could snap my fingers and take away the suffering that foster care brings, I absolutely would, but I would never take away what it has taught me. I now know the true love and grace of God, and it is only because of my journey that I do. It is so easy to doubt the goodness of God in the midst of tragedy, but with my faith and the love that God has so graciously showed me, I can never doubt that he is active and alive in my life. Thank you.